Good day, grade 12s. Before we carry on with the next section of work, I just quickly want to summarize now the 3 equilibrium positions for the individual producer in the short run. This would be the content that we've covered over the last 3 lessons. Alright, so this is just a summary. It is basically a repetition of what we did in the last 3 lessons. And you can find this on page 21 in your textbook. I'm running over this very, very quickly because this is now old news. Okay, so we're just going to make a comparison. And remember, not this table specifically, but the 3 equilibrium positions for the individual producer in the short run is a possible essay question. You obviously cannot do it in a table form like this. You would have to write a proper essay. Okay, but if we look at the comparison quickly, the definition, when we talk about a normal profit, we said a normal profit is the minimum earnings that the entrepreneur requires to prevent him from leaving the industry and making an investment elsewhere. So the normal profit, we said basically, is the money that the entrepreneur pays himself on a monthly basis for his input into the business. Okay, so we make a normal profit when the business breaks even. Okay, so normal profit will be made depending on what we are looking at. If we're looking at the totals, a normal profit will be made when total revenue equals total cost, or if we look at the averages, when average revenue equals average cost. When we move over to the economic profit, we said that the economic profit is the profit that the entrepreneur will make or that the business will make over and above the normal profits. So when an economic profit is made, this means that the entrepreneur will receive his normal profit plus over and above that. He is entitled to also take the economic profit that the business is making. Remember, we said economic profit is abnormal profit. It is over and above the normal profit. It is excessive profit. And this will happen if the total revenue is higher than the total cost, or my average revenue is bigger than my average cost. And then in the last equilibrium position is when the firm can make an economic loss. Okay, remember, an economic loss will be realized if the revenue that the business receives is not enough to cover its total costs. So in the case of an economic loss, your total revenue received is less than your total cost, or if you just look at the averages, your average revenue is less than my average cost. If we look at the demand curve, remember, as long as we are in the perfect market, the demand curve looks exactly the same. So it doesn't matter if you are drawing a normal profit or an economic profit or an economic loss. Your demand curve in the perfect market is always a horizontal line at the market price, a perfectly elastic demand curve at the market price. And just remember, because it is the perfect market, they are price takers. They cannot change the price. The market determines the price. And because the price is constant, your marginal revenue is also equal to the price. So your horizontal, perfectly elastic demand curve represents your demand curve, your average revenue curve, as well as your marginal revenue curve. And this will be true regardless of which equilibrium position you are drawing. If we move over to the profit maximization point, again, it doesn't matter if you are drawing a normal profit, an economic profit, or an economic loss. It doesn't matter even which market structure you are in. Profits are always maximized where marginal cost equals marginal revenue. Okay, so you're always looking for this point on a graph where marginal cost and marginal revenue is equal. This is my profit maximization point. Okay, the information here refers to the graphs that is kind of on the next page. Okay, I'm going to go there now. Right. So if we look at the normal profit, I'm going to skip ahead to the graph. Okay, this is the graph. It's on a subsequent page. You can page ahead. Okay, for this graph specifically, we need to find profit maximization point. Profits are maximized where? Marginal cost, my blue graph, equals marginal revenue, my green graph. Where those two graphs intersect, that would be at point E. So my price in this case will be 25 Rand and my profit maximizing output will be 50. In terms of the economic profit, okay, a different graph. Again, my profits are maximized where my marginal cost, in this case my orange graph, equals my marginal revenue, the blue graph. So where those two graphs intersect, that is at point E. Point E is my profit maximization point. What is my price? My demand curve determines my price. So there's my demand curve. My price will be 25 Rand. My profit maximizing output at point E would be 50. And if we look at the last graph, the economic loss, again, profits are maximized where marginal cost, this light blue graph or purple, what is that? Okay, equals my marginal revenue, the pink graph. So where those two graphs intersect, that is at point E. So profit maximization is at point E. My price on the demand curve that determines my price is 25 Rand. My profit maximizing output, the quantity is 50. Right. Then remember, up to this point, up to profit maximization point, you can see it's exactly the same. Okay, whether you're drawing a normal profit, an economic loss, all the information is exactly the same. But now, the location of my average cost curve, this is what will determine a normal profit, economic profit, or economic loss. In the case of a normal profit, at profit maximization point, my average cost and my average revenue must be equal, or my total cost and my total revenue must be equal. So when we put this information on a graph, this will mean that my average cost curve lies on top of my average revenue curve. It must touch my profit maximization point. Okay, your average cost is tangent. It lies on top of the average revenue curve. So if we go to the graph, there you can see it. Okay, there's my average cost graph. You can see there's my average revenue. It's the same as the demand curve. My average cost graph is lying on top of, it is tangent to my average revenue, which means at point E, my green graph is touching, my pink graph is touching, my blue graph is touching, all of them are touching. But most importantly, for it to be a normal profit, my average cost and my average revenue must touch there. Okay, and you can see again, my average revenue intersects with marginal cost there. At its lowest point is where marginal cost will intersect. But a normal profit, my average cost will lie on top of it, will rest on top of my average revenue graph. When we draw an economic profit, this means that my average cost is higher than my average revenue. Just fix these mistakes, okay? Average revenue is higher than my average cost. Okay, it was actually right. Okay, my average cost is less than my average revenue. Or my total cost is less than my total revenue. If I want to make a profit more, my revenue has to be higher. Okay, so my costs are lower than my revenue. So when we draw the average cost curve on our graph, the average cost curve has to be below my average revenue graph, as you can see there. Okay, You can see there's my average revenue graph at profit maximization. Remember what I said, it doesn't matter what happens here or what happens here. At my profit maximization point, my average cost has to be below my average revenue. So that average revenue is higher than average cost. That will indicate a profit. All right, so again, my average cost curve dips below my average revenue graph at the profit maximization point. And again, you can see my marginal cost intersects with my average cost here where my average cost is the lowest. The last situation, okay, is when we draw an economic loss. When we draw a loss, obviously our costs are higher than our revenue. So we are not earning enough to cover all of our costs. So basically it means that my average cost is more than my average revenue, or my total cost is more than my total revenue. When I put it on a graph, it means that my average cost has to be higher than my average revenue. So in this graph here, you can see there's your average revenue graph, the pink one. Your average cost is higher, above my average revenue, because my costs are higher than my revenue if I make a loss. Okay, you will see in this case I have added an average variable cost curve, which we didn't do when we drew these graphs in a couple of lessons before this one. I'm going to refer back to this now, because we need average variable cost to determine shutdown. Okay, we scoot back up. Right, for the calculations, right, again, for a normal profit, I'm going to go back to the graph just now. So we have to calculate profit as total revenue minus total cost. In order to do this, we have to calculate the total revenue and the total cost first. All right, so if we scoot ahead to the graph again. Okay, this is your normal profit. To calculate the total revenue, you need price times quantity. So all you're looking for is your profit maximization. At profit maximization, what is my price? My demand curve determines the price. So my price is 25 Rand. My quantity is 50 Rand. To calculate my total cost, I'm going to take average cost times quantity. So at my profit maximization, what is my average cost? At this point, my pink graph is also touching here. So my average cost also is 25 Rand. And my quantity is the same thing, it is 50. And if you do that calculation, you will see that the total revenue is 1,250 and my total cost is 1,250, which means my profit is 0 if I calculate it. Just remember, in economics, there's no such thing as zero profit. This zero profit doesn't mean no profit. It means the entrepreneur will receive his normal profit. Okay, if we go ahead to the economic profit, okay, that is the graph that is relevant for this one. We need to also calculate the total economic profit. So again, profit is total revenue minus total cost. On this graph, we don't have any totals. We only have averages. So we need to calculate the total revenue. And total revenue again is price times quantity. Again, you look for your profit maximization point. Your price is determined by the demand curve. So the price is 25 Rand. Your profit maximizing output is 50. So your total revenue price times quantity will be 1,250. To calculate your total cost, you're going to take average cost times quantity. So again, at my profit maximization point, what is my average cost? I go down, down, down until I touch my average cost. And then I go to the side to see that my average cost is 20 Rand. So average cost is 20 times by the quantity, which is 50. All right, so that will give you your total cost. That means that quantity, average cost times quantity is 1,000. Okay, so if your total revenue is 1,250 and your total cost is 1,000, your profit, total revenue minus total cost, will mean that your total economic profit is 250. Or, remember, I did show you the alternative calculation also. If you calculate the profit per unit, okay, we said that the average revenue is the same as the price. Okay, so average revenue was 25 Rand minus the average cost, we said was 20 Rand. Okay, so 25 minus 20 is 5. That is the profit per unit. But we didn't produce just one, we produced 50. So 5 times 50 means the total economic profit is 250 Rand. If we look at the losses, last one. All right, again, to calculate the total economic loss, total revenue minus total cost. We don't have total revenue, we don't have total cost, but we do have the averages. So to calculate total revenue, we take price times quantity. The price is found on the demand curve. So your price is 25 Rand. Your profit maximizing quantity is 50. So your total revenue 1,250. To calculate your total cost, we are going to take average cost times quantity. So again, at my profit maximization point, up, 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 until I touch the average cost graph to the side, and we see that my average cost is 35 Rand times by the quantity at profit maximization point. The quantity is 50. So if we do that, total cost would be 35 Rand times 50, which is 1,750. If we calculate the loss then, total revenue minus total cost, it would be a loss of 500 Rand, total loss. Or if you use the alternative method, then it is average revenue minus average cost. Average revenue equals the price. Price was 25 Rand. Minus your average cost was 35 Rand. That gives you a 10 Rand loss per unit. But we are not producing just one. We are producing 50. So that means a 500 Rand total economic loss. Okay. This is all revision. We've done this in the previous 3 lessons. Okay, if we just look at the conclusion, a business will make a normal profit if my average cost equals my average revenue, all right, or the price. Average cost equals the price, or average cost equals average revenue. Average revenue equals the price, all right. Now, a normal profit can be made in the short run, but it can also be made in the long run. So if they give you a graph where you can identify that the individual producer is making a normal profit, and they ask you, is this a short run or a long run equilibrium? In the case of a normal profit, your answer is going to be it is a long run equilibrium. In the short run, they can make an economic profit, they can make an economic loss, but in the long run, they can only make a normal profit. And remember, when we make a normal profit, it means our average revenue and our average cost is equal, or total cost equals total revenue, which means that it is break even. Okay, if a business breaks even, it looks like there is no profit. It means that the entrepreneur is purely receiving his normal profit. In the case of an economic profit, a business will make an economic profit if his average cost is lower than the market price. Price equals average revenue. Okay, so if the average cost is lower than the average revenue, the costs are more than enough to cover the revenue is more than enough to cover the costs, then the business will make an economic profit. And as I said, an economic profit in the perfect market. An economic profit is only possible in the short run. It is not going to last into the long run, because when individual producers in the short run are making an economic profit, remember this is the perfect market, so there's freedom of entry and exit. which means other entrepreneurs will see, oh, the people in this industry is making economic profit. I also want to enter this industry because I also want to make an economic profit. So in the next lesson, we are going to see what is going to happen if more businesses enter the industry. But other business entering the industry is going to take these economic profit away, and it's going to turn it into a normal profit in the long run. If we look at the economic loss, remember a business will make an economic loss if average cost is higher than average revenue. Average revenue equals the price, okay? So if the average cost is higher, it's more than the average revenue, our revenue is not enough to cover all of our costs. That'll create an economic loss. And just the same as the economic profit, if an economic loss is made, this is only possible in the short run. Okay, in the short run, it will happen. There will be economic losses, but when there's economic losses, remember, two things can happen. There's freedom of entry and exit. Businesses want to maximize their profit. They don't want to make losses. So either they're going to shut down or they're going to close down the business and leave this industry. It is the perfect market. There's freedom of exit. Okay, so some businesses are going to decide, I don't want to be in this industry anymore because I don't want to make losses. They're going to pack up their stuff and they're going to leave this industry to open another business in a different industry. And if that happens, things are going to happen in the market. As I said in the next lesson, I'm going to show you what happens when this happens. Ultimately, what it means is the price is going to increase. Okay. But other firms, as I said, some of them are going to pack up and leave. Others are going to shut down. Remember, the minute that the price, which is the same as average revenue, price or average revenue is less than the average variable cost, then the firm will shut down. Okay, so if I skip quickly to this graph, okay, remember I said to you, they included the average variable cost here so that you can see if this firm is going to shut down. Okay, in this case, this is your average variable cost. Your price is 25. Okay, if you look at this, remember we drew average variable cost. We've drawn the shutdown point, right? If my average cost is running there and it was resting on my equilibrium point, it was touching there by E, that indicates shutdown. In this case, my average variable cost dips below my average revenue, my average revenue graph. Okay, it means that at my profit maximization point, the price is 25 Rand. My average variable cost, if I go down, down, down there, it hasn't got a value. Okay, but if I had go down, down, down there, it would have been less than 25. Okay, so in this case, this firm will not shut down because my average variable cost is below my price. Remember, a firm will shut down if the average variable cost is more than the average revenue. All right, so if it was touching, it was resting on my demand curve, that would be the shutdown point. Okay, this firm will not shut down because your average revenue is higher than my average variable cost. Okay, so you must apply the shutdown rule if they actually give you an average variable cost.